Well, that was weird. I just got done watching Maycee Barber versus Erin Blanchfield, the UFC fight night that happened in the Apex. I guess it didn't happen. A bunch of fights fell out this week throughout the process of us coming to the Apex for this fight night card. There's a bunch of theories as to what happened. A bunch of stories that have been released confirming the reason why certain fighters have pulled out of their matchups, but I really think that this is what happened to every single fighter who didn't show up to the cage to fight today. The theme kind of was, and then they all died. And there was a lot of hilarious, funny knockout moments and choke submission moments. So we're going to talk about it all, starting with our main event. Erin Blanchfield versus Maycee Barber is like Bigfoot, or the Chupacabra, or a unicorn, or like the Loch Ness Monster. Some guy on Instagram said that Maycee Barber looks like Luka Modric, and she does, bro. Especially whenever she was all sunken in on the scale. She looked like an Amazing World of Gumball character at the weigh-ins. And she was still okay with fighting. So I braced myself for this main event that I was loathing having to sit through. And they announced that it was called off, and I got up and I started doing the Israel Adesanya Nigerian dance, just like Stylebender himself. I got up and I did like the dance that he did after he knocked out Robert Whittaker with like this. I was so happy that we didn't have to watch this anymore, man. Maycee Barber, I wasn't very happy about this, though. I was happy that we don't have to see the fight. Was not happy about the reason. I'm going to get serious right now because this isn't funny. Maycee Barber had a seizure, and this is really scary because I imagine if it happened in the cage, dude. And she just started tweaking for no reason. We saw what happened to Shane Burgos in the Edson Barbosa fight whenever he ate the punch and then had the delayed reaction to it. Imagine if Maycee Barber just started frothing at the mouth inside of the cage. That's actually not funny, dude, if she just started tweaking like that. I wouldn't be able to laugh at this. Blanchfield, though, she acted like Maycee Barber was just on Tiramisu Tuesdays whenever she missed weight. And throughout her fight camp, and she chose like this was something that she wanted to happen with this fight going the way that it did and it not taking place. And I think this is super unfair, and it's something that women do. Women moment, man. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all, dude. This is just like whenever my sneaky link picks up my phone, she's just gonna blame the person and not the circumstance. Like it's just a circumstance. It's like you're blaming the person right now. The same thing happened to Paul Craig with Rodolfo Bellato, the herpes man. And that boy, Paul Craig, was probably just like, I just want to rolly with a dab of wrench. And then he kept it moving. He didn't hate on Rodolfo Bellato. These things happen, bro. That hoe burned him. Blanchfield deserves money for this, since she did make weight and they were like 30 seconds away from fighting. But instead of rescheduling her for another main event, she should just get into competitive Fortnite and start streaming and never fight in MMA ever again. From the bottom of my heart, I hope we never see this fight on Fornham Grave. So Blanchfield won via terminal illness in the main event of tonight. Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludoveit Klein. We like to make this joke about the Grant Dawson master class. Whenever other wrestle-heavy fighters who don't do anything productive win, people like to be outliers of the group, and they'll say, oh yeah, well, I like this fighter. He's about to put on a wrestling master class. But Mateusz Gamrot's fights are actually pretty cool. And people definitely undermine his abilities just because of the way that he approaches them. And I enjoy his striking for a minute and 30 seconds that we get to see cumulatively of it. Because he always gets dropped on the feet at the beginning of his fights. And this time it was a jab. It was a jab that made him pin drop like a jerk dancer. He looked like a b-boy out there. He ate this jab and then he just sat on his heels and stood up again. And he was like, okay, I'm wrestling now. And then he got the takedown super easily. And he secured it by locking his grip on the cage for a double leg. Ludoveit Klein was actually pretty competent in defending, and so he switched to a single leg and transitioned to a trip. Got the fight down to the ground where Ludoveit Klein had to post on one of his arms to get balance to crawl back to the cage. Mateusz Gamrot was able to just be really heavy on Ludoveit Klein and stay in these positions and control the back. But this was all throughout a clinch sequence, because as soon as he did get this single leg secured, Ludoveit Klein just got right back up. So Gamrot is grinding out Klein in the clinch, and he freezes Ludoveit Klein on the cage. He's not able to do anything, Klein, for this entire first round after he gets dropped. He's completely arrested by Gamrot. Gamrot is landing strikes in these sequences where he's pinning Ludoveit Klein up against the fence, and he's landing ground and pound whenever he is in these back control positions whenever they're on the cage. It's not a Gamrot fight without a 10-10 round. I would say the first round was as close to a draw round as you could score anything. Granted, it wasn't very clean, but it was a drop, and it was just pure control from Gamrot then afterwards. Mateusz demonstrated a technique in wrestling I've never seen before. This was a very special tech. He traded leg kicks with Ludoveit Klein. Ludoveit Klein throws his lead leg. Mateusz Gamrot throws his rear leg. Mateusz Gamrot hits Ludoveit Klein's rear leg, which is planted so he can throw the lead leg kick. And as soon as both of their legs make contact, Gamrot shoots a low single. I mean, I've seen a low single technique before, but I've never seen it timed at this moment whenever one fighter's leg is lifted up and the other one is purposefully baiting this so that he can go for the far leg with the low single. And that was a really nice technique. This was just as Ludoveit Klein was starting to open up with his striking. Mateusz Gamrot gets this takedown off of the kick and then smothers Ludoveit Klein under him until the end of round 2. So Gamrot learned how to fight from Wile E. Coyote. That's the reason why his fights are so fun to watch, because he's nearly getting banged like once every 30 seconds. You see him nearly go to sleep by a hair every single time. Other times you'll convince yourself completely that he's just gone to sleep, and then you'll look closely and you'll see if he's moving around a little bit more, and he is, and you're like, oh, thank goodness. If you're rooting for him, I've never really rooted against Gamrot, though. That's kind of one of my more liked fighters in the UFC. Round 3, Gamrot tried that same takedown that I mentioned earlier, and he dove right into an uncocked knee and nearly folded himself. And the knee made this crazy noise, and I was like, oh my goodness, Gamrot is done. Because he didn't move for a little bit, but it just hit his chest. And these things happen, we eat those. So Gamrot is an active grappler. He is more entertaining than people give him credit for. His fights are like a Final Destination movie where he has 8 near misses with death in 15 minutes. He won this decision. I was texting my friend earlier today. He actually does put money up for these fights, and he was like, yo, does Gamrot win against Ludoveit Klein? And I was like, dude, Gamrot owns Klein. And I'm glad that I didn't have to eat those words tonight. So if this had to be our main event, I'm actually not super dissatisfied by that. Ramiz Brahimaj, I was listening to them pronounce it. Apparently you don't say it Brahimaj, it's Brahimaj. So, my fault, OG. Versus Billy Goff. Bro, this fight. They got that boy Billy Goff on the ref cam. Bro, that ref cam is about to be so devious. For all the times that people are going to get brutally knocked out in the near future, that ref cam is about to be responsible for some funny memes. Billy Goff survived this early back take from Ramiz Brahimaj. Ramiz Brahimaj just walked down Billy Goff. Billy Goff was taking mad steps back into the cage. Ramiz Brahimaj is like, okay, I'm going to wrestle now. He shoots a takedown. He gets it. Brahimaj, my bad, I was calling him Brahimaj right there. What am I doing? I just said his name was Brahimaj. Brahimaj. He wasted no time getting his hooks in, his leg hooks, into Billy Goff, and he started attempting a rear naked choke. He was cranking the face as well. Goff stands up on the cage from this position. So they're clenching there up against the fence. Ramiz is still trying to force a submission like crazy, and he jumps a guillotine, like full force jumps it, pulls guard and everything. And he falls on his butt, and he's able to get up immediately because that boy Billy Goff is still mad disoriented from the face crank. Goff used Brahimaj being out of position to reverse him in the clinch, and he pressured him moving towards the side of the octagon, and he used this to set up a really messy takedown, and Ramiz Brahimaj just got a high elbow guillotine immediately. And he modified this guillotine into a ninja choke, and then he went back to the guillotine, and then he finished it, and he dumped Goff's carcass onto the ground, and the ref cam got a close-up of Goff's unconscious body, bro. Having grappled personally, face cranks are super disorienting. If you're doing a live round and you've tapped I was tapping a face crank, especially if you were going against a guy who was heavier than you and he was just squeezing your chin. No, I'm tapping, dude. And afterwards, if you immediately get up and you're starting rounds on the feet, if you're starting rounds butt scooting into each other, no, you got to start and learn how to wrestle in jiu-jitsu too. But if you're wrestling right after you got face cranked and it was like tight enough to the point where you need to like tap, or if you get out of a sub and you reset and get back to your feet and now you're wrestling, it's pretty disorienting. It feels like you just got solar flared. So I get why his attempt at wrestling looked the way that it did after he barely survived that first choke. But Brahimaj, he thanked Sean Shelby for not cutting him as he battled through injuries and lost a few times. I think he gave a really nice speech after he won this fight about how he's glad to fight in the UFC, which is the best organization in the world. It really is, man. Evidence of this is how we can get these poo butt cards and they'll still be mad entertaining to watch. I was thoroughly entertained watching this fight card. This was a very funny moment. Show the photo again. Show the photo again. It was a pretty happy moment to see Ramiz win as an underdog on short notice. DC is the real winner for getting to keep his hat. Brahimaj, he won via brutal round 1 sub. I had predicted a KO before in another video that I had made, the one talking about Pico versus Evloev. The fight before this was also amazing, a first round stoppage. Dustin Jacoby versus Bruno Lopes. Dustin Jacoby may be one of the funnest fighters on the roster. He either catches a hat, or he straight up gets put inside of a pack himself every single time that he fights. Whatever goes down, it always ends up happening in the first round, and it is super crazy. Bruno, it feels like maybe a cursed name in MMA. It's been a bad year to be named Bruno. If your name is Bruno, there's a prophecy that's written somewhere that we just don't know about. Well, if you start a martial arts career, you're going to get brutally knocked out at some point, or several times throughout it. Jacoby had this guy on Chicken Street with a lone jab. He just threw one jab, and he made this guy do the Slava Claus emote. And he clinched him, and his corner commanded him to disengage. He was like, break the clinch and throw an elbow on the break. You heard the corner speaking to him because he had moved Lopes into his corner so he could talk to his guys. And I was watching to see if Bruno would counter on the break, because that would be his moment to win, as I talked about my predictions video. That Dustin Jacoby, he is good in the clinch, and he's good at range as well. But as he's entering the clinch, he has this tendency to reach, and that's whenever he's getting caught by these guys who were throwing short shots on the inside to knock him out. The bus did leave for Bruno to mount a crazy comeback pretty fast. He ate a couple of uppercuts, and that made him start moving on the cage like he was riding a surfboard. That's what was funny about this fight. Before he got brutally flatline KO'd, he first took the jab. I don't know how it did so much damage. They go into the clinch. Dustin Jacoby gets the order from his corner to disengage the clinch. He's like, okay, I got you guys. He moves into the collar tie and starts dropping uppercuts onto Bruno Lopes. And Bruno Lopes doesn't like this at all. So his defense against the cage, he starts like moving like this, like he's on a surfboard, bro. I can't replicate it perfectly because I haven't taken head trauma, but it was some of the most funny defense. And he just ends up going to sleep, dude. The last punch in the sequence, one of the hooks, it just ends up flatline KOing him, man. And this was perfect timing after the stinkfest that Chiasson versus Viera was. Jacoby knocked this guy out on accident, and I really appreciate the sleepy KO after 2 weeks of no fights. Thank you, Dustin Jacoby. You're valid in this hood. Fighters who come from Glory Kickboxing, I think, are being represented well by Dustin Jacoby. And I like how MMA fighters from kickboxing strike in general. The clinch was not like a fat heavyweight stalling for no reason after rocking his opponent. Because you know how sometimes in the heavier weight classes, especially in heavyweight, whenever we are talking about one of these fat dudes, they'll rock the guy that they're fighting, and they'll just clinch him for no reason. This is like a Mo Usman tactic. I'm going to score a fight-altering rock after being down 2 rounds in the third, and then I'm just going to clinch you. But Dustin Jacoby, he wrapped up this clinch, and it was still part of his finishing sequence. So very nice skills. Apparently he's going to go play some golf now. Dustin Jacoby is likely going to fight Minying Zhang after this and get eviscerated. So tonight he gets to enjoy a round 1 KO, which was very nice for my viewership. Something that I can't say the same about was Ketlen Viera versus Maycee Chiasson. Macy has some real technical issues on the ground, and in the stand-up, if she can't escape off the cage, she's pretty much useless if she doesn't have like the whole octagon to move around. So for her being as large as she is and fighting in the apex, this is a real disadvantage for her in her style. Despite being larger than Viera, as I was just talking about, she's very big. She was able to be bullied and outworked by Ketlen in the clinch, where she was just able to use her black belt level judo, that for some reason didn't work against Kayla Harrison, to get the fight to the ground and control Macy. The reason why Ketlen Viera's judo was even able to work against Maycee Chiasson was because she was getting on the inside with her boxing, and she also never attempted to do this against Kayla Harrison either. Ketlen Viera must have just known the type of threat that she was dealing with in all areas of the game. If I was a woman, I wouldn't want to fight Kayla Harrison either. Macy is just a 15-foot wide bucket in basketball terms, and Viera made her look like Leroy from Black Ops 2. The zombies map buried whenever you shoot near him and he does this. And that's how Macy got taken down. And it went like this all 3 rounds. Ketlen Viera would come out and just make some noises while punching. and then Macy would do this, and then just get taken down. Maycee Chiasson is big as hell for no reason. And you could convince me that a cricket found a magical genie bottle, and he got 3 wishes, and one of them was to become a 5'11" human woman. And if you said that that cricket was just learning how to use his new body, I might actually believe you, dude. Her movements on the floor were so clunky, Maycee Chiasson. It was like she was playing on high ping. I believed that she'd be a title challenger, but I was very incorrect about this. Viera has already lost to the girl who will be champion by the end of the year, so this fight literally meant nothing. But Ketlen Viera did win by unanimous decision. The next fight, Zachary Reese versus Dusko Todorovic. Dusko kind of looks like Sneeko in that photo, I just realized. He weirdly looks like Sneeko, I can't describe it. Reese's grappling is really good. We've known this though, it's pretty solid. And he was using his butterfly hooks to sweep Todorovic, who was in on a guillotine very early, since his game plan was just to walk down Zachary Reese and try to sub him. I feel like he would have done better with a more TKO geared approach as Azamat Mirzakhanov went with, because Zachary Reese does like to play guard positions a lot. And his ground and pound was largely working, Dusko Todorovic, but he was really trying for these submissions early. I find that the best grapplers are actually okay with losing the fight for a little bit in certain moments where it doesn't favor them. They know this and they'll be like, okay, I can just flow out of here in like maybe 30 seconds. I'll just ride this out. Dusko never finished that guillotine, and he was super tired whenever they stood, and this led to Reese being able to dominate the clinch work and get busy with a really nice Muay Thai style clinch. He was throwing some really good knees and elbows at the very early going of this fight. He didn't do a whole lot of wrestling offensively, but Dusko was forcing him to wrestle. And one thing that I noticed, something that I see a lot of Instagram reels about, octopus guard and MMA, all the people who grapple probably know what I'm talking about, but in half guard, it's like whenever you sit into the person that you're wrestling with, and you kind of make your body into an L shape under them. And what you're doing is seat belting your shoulder across theirs. You're getting to a position where basically MMA doesn't work. So even though Dusko Todorovic was winning by controlling the position of being on the top over Zachary Reese, he wasn't really able to do anything to make the position dangerous. And Reese's grappling style seems like a danger to himself. It's like he's trying to get TKO'd with how he'll accept bottom positions and not move to escape. Even after he gets stacked and begins absorbing strikes, he won't move to escape from full guard. He'll just try to either close his guard or like get higher for a triangle setup. But he's getting hit, dude. It's crazy. DC roasted a Dusko Todorovic takedown entry at one point. Dusko Todorovic feinted a takedown and he went like, and DC was like, what the? And he said, oh, my bad. That slipped, you guys. My bad. Reese was okay with getting wrestled, but he was better at striking than Dusko. Reese was less physical than Dusko Todorovic, so that made it so he couldn't resist the wrestling as much as he probably would have liked to, unless he was the first one to go in wrestling. But stuffing takedowns was always going to be a harder task for Reese in this fight than actually getting them against Dusko Todorovic, just because, if anything, Dusko Todorovic is pretty strong. But in terms of the striking, off of the clinch breaks, feinted takedowns, and at the end of Dusko's combos, Reese was able to land a check hook and a cross pretty much whenever he wanted. Dusko being stronger meant that he could probably get a takedown over Zachary Reese anytime that he tried it, and this was true. Anytime that he tried to take down Zachary Reese, he could at least get a scored takedown, whether or not Zachary Reese immediately popped up or not. And if Zachary Reese did go through the motions of having to defend the takedown and get back to his feet, that took like at least 45 seconds sometimes, and those are precious seconds in a 15-minute fight. And once he realized that there was a real danger of losing this fight on the cards if he was just going to stick around and get wrestled and press into the clinch, he was like, I'm going to wrestle first so I stop losing time. And this was a very smart call for him to make. I say Reese won the last 2 rounds of this fight. He said on the mic with DC that he should have wrestled more in the first one, and I do agree that this was a mistake that he had made. But he was still able to lock in, and he thanks his reps with Sean Strickland for this. He got on the mic and was like, I just imagined Sean Strickland over me while we were wrestling at Kill Cliff being like, get up, pussy, get back to your feet. We got some pretty funny Octagon interviews tonight. That was a good moment, and Sean Strickland sounds exactly like the impression that he did of him in the Octagon. The fight before that one was Jafel Filho versus Alan Nascimento. These were 2 of the worst walkout songs I've ever heard in my life. Nascimento's striking looked horrible, and Ian Gary was not there. That made me nervous because I said before he's a shoot-a-box fighter. Ian Gary corners these shoot-a-box fighters whenever he's in the general area. So if Ian Gary was there, this is kind of a layup for Nascimento. And I didn't see Ian Gary anywhere. That made me scared, dude. Especially since Filho came out with some pressure immediately and he got a takedown. Nascimento gave up his back for free in an attempt to stand. And Filho is pretty experienced in the backpack. I see why the scheduling made sense because both of these fighters prefer to sink hooks and body triangles in and work those back take positions. So we saw who was better at it tonight, and it was actually a pretty fun grappling match to watch. He would secure the spot of getting the back take Filho early on into the fight, but he would be unable to do anything with it because Alan primarily works from here as well, and he knew all of the defenses. That didn't stop the fact that Alan Nascimento was getting dominated. He was trying to escape the body triangle by turning into it, and he fed his head right into a guillotine, and he almost got choked at the end of the first round. Jafel is controlling so much that in 3 minutes into round 2, he throws his Hail Mary reverse triangle attempt, which was a mistake because he lost this round to Nascimento, who didn't let him get this position back once he just immediately slid off of the top of his back and then was in side control. Alan is a complete grappler. Jafel refused to flow through positions like I talked about before. The best grappler is okay with losing sometimes because they know they can just flow through scrambles and get out of these positions where opportunities present themselves and they don't necessarily just need to force them. Filho is trying to force everything, and he was just getting his transitions stuffed like UFC 5. You know what it's like whenever you're playing online and you match with some guy who's low level and he's just spamming transitions and you're stuffing him. That's exactly what was going on with Jafel Filho on bottom positions against Alan Nascimento. Jafel Filho is only able to play offensively on the ground, and 0 escapes, 0 get-ups, and 0 reversals from the bottom. It's like he's prematurely panic wrestling in these fights because he knows that if he gets wrestled first, it's over for him. And another thing that I noticed about grappling in MMA, wrestling techniques, leg riding. It kind of sucks in MMA whenever you're wrestling against a jiu-jitsu guy because they always counter with front chokes, and whenever you are leg riding, you can get in on the takedown, but it's never a good shot. And the best time to attempt a guillotine is whenever somebody's taking a bad shot on you with poor head placement. Whenever you're leg riding, especially whenever you got sprawled bad and you have to contort your body and your shoulder around to the side to try to get your head off to isolate a leg, you might as well bail. Pull guard or try like a step through escape because you're just going to get anaconda or darced if you're just holding on to that leg and you're not letting it go. That's unless you're like Hamza Chimaev or Islam Makhachev. You have to be a crazy level of wrestler if you're going to actually implement this as a regular thing, especially later on into a fight whenever you get tired. If you are able to stay disciplined with placing your head in a position where you can't get choked, these are only very good fighters who are able to do this. Filho took Alan down in the 3rd round and he got to the back, but he got too high again on this body triangle that he was trying to lock in, and he fell off and he got reversed inside control. Alan Nascimento ended up winning this fight, so this was a decision victory for him. The 3rd fight on the card was Kurt Holoba versus Jordan Levitt. Levitt came out with the Travis Bickle taxi driver haircut. He has a juice box fade there. I would personally never put any of these hairstyles on my GTA character, but he would strangle me to death, so what does he care about what I have to say? This fight was so easy for the Monkey King to win. He did no striking and got a takedown immediately. After the takedown was secured, the announcers were chatting about Holoba's jiu-jitsu credentials, and while this was going on, Jordan took the back and he pulled off a beautiful suplex. As soon as this cage get-up was completed, he went for a ride, and they did a full arc through the air, and Kurt Holoba landed on his head and shoulder, and he just looked up and he nodded. He was like, okay, you got me. They kept scrambling once they hit the floor. Kurt tried to leg ride, and Levitt scooped up a guillotine, and he transitioned it into an anaconda effortlessly, and he put Kurt to sleep with it. So we had back-to-back examples of why you just shouldn't cling to those legs if you aren't an overly physical fighter for your weight class. Levitt won easily, and DC congratulated him for winning and giving up twerking. Levitt is like, I just had another kid. I'm done with UFC tutorial mode. These sound like the words of a guy who doesn't want to be a gatekeeper anymore. So maybe his new child is what he needed to make a serious run for the belt. It'd be fun to watch him take some higher profile contender matchups, but we've seen pretty much what his skill cap is against Paddy Pimblett. Unless he's hit a 2nd win in his career and he's developing like crazy. DC was also like, so what's the new celebration since there's no more twerking? And Jordan Levitt on the spot rips the cleanest worm of 2025 ever captured on camera so far in this year. And it was on command. And there was no thought in between. He was like, oh, new celebration. Well, if I did have to pick one, I would say, oh, you're putting me on the spot. And then he just does the worm. I was watching this just hoping that he didn't Johnny Walker his shoulder. I was kind of nail biting a little bit. That's crazy that that guy actually hurt himself doing the worm in the octagon after knocking someone out. I think that a fight with Jordan Levitt and Terrence McKinney would be fun eventually. He did win this fight by round 1 submission. There's definitely a lot of things that you could do with him. As you're bringing more contenders in, this is definitely one of those guys that you can put through the UFC ringer with. He is a guy who belongs in the best organization in the world because he has very high-level skills. It was good to watch him win tonight. The second fight on the card was Michael Aswell versus Balaji Oki. Michael Aswell is a guy who fought Bogdan Grad on Dana White's Contender Series at featherweight, and he's not a bad guy for the UFC to decided to call, but he was undersized, especially for this matchup. The reason why they did call him is because stylistically he was super similar to Markel Medros, who he was replacing for this fight. I was talking about how Markel Medros likes to play with open palms out at range, and Michael Aswell does the exact same thing. A very boxing-heavy fighters. The fight that I saw Aswell put on tonight was pretty close to the footage that I was watching of Medros when I was making the prediction before he was replaced because of, I don't even know what the reason was the original fight fell out. All I know is that Oki is a grappler's dream with how wide his stance is. That single leg is right there. Whenever some guy has the mind to come out and wrestle him, Chris Duncan, I think, did. I'm not sure whether it was Chris Duncan took him down or he baited a shot out of Balaji Oki, but he managed to get that fight to the ground. This man is basically doing the splits. Like, each of his ankles are in one corner of the octagon. His stance is so wide. Oki looked like a Skyrim giant in this fight compared to Michael. Aswell immediately started trying to chess match fight this guy. And that style of striking was not favoring Michael Aswell being the shorter guy with much less reach than Balaji Oki. So he was getting countered a lot by Balaji at the beginning of this fight. And he was setting up his right super well off of pulls. And he was landing a good jab to start this fight, Balaji Oki was. But one thing that I had mentioned in my predictions video, and something that I noticed about Balaji Oki on film, is that he does well at a certain range. It's like a sweet spot at whenever he can strike. And if you are a shorter fighter, all you have to do is invade this certain range in the void where he can't get full extension or leverage off on his punches because his arms are so long. And it is pretty close. But once that boy Michael Aswell realized that he just had to get through this buffer zone, he was getting into range any way that he wanted. And he was setting up this right hand which kept landing. His boxing did look crisp, and he stayed diligent on these jab entries that he was throwing with the hop into range. And he was making it out without getting countered most of the time. And the fight was looking this way for most of the first round and the beginning of the second as well. Late round 2, Oki, he started timing that counter again, and he busted up Michael's face pretty bad. Before then, Aswell could blitz in close. He could land a straight on the entry. He could pull, and he could get Balaji Oki to miss a straight counter because he was in so close, and he could land another straight and get out. And then he could get both of those punches off for free in a sequence. And he could do that over and over again. But then Balaji Oki started timing those entries and catching him with the right as he was coming in for the first strike, or whenever he was already in range, he started dropping his hook off. Balaji was better at controlling the octagon, the doy, because he's a large 155er fighting a featherweight who's coming up for a circus match. He was definitely benefiting from being in the cage with the featherweight, and he's already larger than most 155ers, so it was a grotesque size difference in this matchup. Potentially it was the extra weight on Michael Aswell. He gassed out pretty bad. His punches weren't doing a whole lot to Balaji Oki. These entries that I was talking about, these blitzes and the pull counters as well, were not stinging Balaji Oki whatsoever. The damage coming back to him whenever he would get caught in range, or just through taking jabs off Balaji Oki for 3 rounds, it was adding up, and it looked a lot more significant than anything he was able to get off on Balaji Oki. The physicality made way too much of a difference, and I wish I would have seen that Zulu warrior tattoo on the back of Balaji Oki before I made the worst tattoos video 1 and 2, because man, that thing sucks. Balaji Oki via decision was what went down tonight. I only made an official prediction for Markel Medros versus Balaji Oki, so I'm not going to count this one. I'm going to sit this one out. The first fight of the night, though, was Ryan Dos Santos versus Alice Ardelian. It's WMMA, but there was a surprisingly low amount of head movement in this fight. Ardelian was much more active than Hayani Dos Santos throughout this fight. That's another fighter who I had been pronouncing their name wrong. Hayani instead of Ryan Dos Santos, my bad. Ardelian, though, for as much as her output was dwarfing Hayani's, Dos Santos was the more powerful one, but she kept on missing these beautiful counter opportunities, and this was really frustrating to watch. Or she would throw instead of just holding her hands whenever the punch was there, but she would miss it. Sometimes high-level strikers have matches like this as well, where they just cannot hit their opponent and they're just missing, and you're seeing it, especially if this is a fighter that you picked as well, and you're watching these punches just whiz by their opponent's head, and you can see how these shots would knock them out. It's really frustrating to watch. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev won, if we're targeting the second one. The first fight was just like this. Alex Pereira could have knocked out Magomed with like 32 punches, but you know, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, you know. Also super frustrating was it watching Dos Santos looking to initiate grappling sequences with Ardelian in the first round and third round, where she got reversed twice. Like, she didn't just get absolutely toasted by Talita Alencar in grappling, displaying that she had no type of bag in wrestling or jiu-jitsu at all. Why are you wrestling? It's not even like she was getting touched up on the feet. She had the upper hand in the striking exchanges that she was just choosing to shoot a takedown in. And Alice Ardelian's strong suit is in the grappling, so she was just reversing her immediately. She was getting hip tossed, dude. Like, what are you doing? Dos Santos just chilled out for the first 2 rounds, where she didn't really do anything, and did 2 fights worth of damage in 3 minutes in the last round, when it didn't even count. Not a single kick was thrown in this fight either. Ardelian shoots a takedown in the second to open up. Dos Santos gets up immediately, and then Ardelian never shoots again. And her striking looks super ineffective, and it is, but she's throwing a lot more punches than Ayani Dos Santos, and that's what ends up winning her the fight. It was a bad fight, but one thing that I noticed about this is it's not like these women aren't down to take some damage, because both of them were pretty bloody and smashed at the end of this. I'm convinced that if they could do any better, they would. Ardelian won this fight, and she asked DC if he thought that the fight was boring because of what people were saying about her online and about this card going into the fight week. This was a really stinky decision won by Ardelian, but I guess we cut her a break. She tried hard. We'll go over the predictions recap. I went 6-2 this week. I don't think that's bad at all. Pretty funny that the WMMA fights are the only 2 ones that I got wrong. I really don't know ball whenever it comes to WMMA. I'll actually self-profess that. But I'm not about to dedicate a whole afternoon into getting into that side of the sport and watching all of the top contenders fights in WMMA, bro. I'll watch a Kong Wang knockout highlight compilation, bro. I'll do that. But yeah, 6-2 this week. One thing that I forgot to do was populate the bottom right corner of this screen. So if you did look there, there's nothing in the bottom right corner of this screen. Weird. Alright, well, you guys, if you made it to this point in the video, I will catch you fellas, alright?